Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy Kenny, and this is Unsung Season 13, and this episode is on the incomparable Cheryl Pepsii Riley. I am such a huge fan of hers. She is definitely a singer that I look up to because she is a powerhouse vocalist. She has probably one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. I mean, I definitely put her in the class of the legends, as Patti LaBelle, Whitney Houston, Anita Baker, Regina Belle. I put her in that class because she is the kind of singer that can literally grab you at command when she opens her mouth. And definitely, she definitely, made her mark in 1988 with the motherhood anthem, Thanks for My Child. A beautiful song. And you have also the likes of Tony Terry, as well as Tyler Perry, and many others were commentators on this episode. But she had a purity in her voice that every time you heard her sing, it literally just stops you dead in your tracks, because the purity and the beauty of her voice just grabs you. They definitely talk about, actually Paul Anthony from Full Force, he pretty much said that Cheryl Pepsii Riley is his favorite singer of all time, hands down. And excuse me. Another person who was a commentator on this episode was Shamar Moore. They even did a play together. But Shamar Moore threw it out there. He was like, look, no disrespect to Beyonce, but Beyonce, sing toe-to-toe with Cheryl Pepsii Riley. You can learn something. Just saying. I was like, okay, Shamar, you better fucking tell it. Because she is that kind of singer that, she just, her voice just blows you away. And definitely when I see her singing in the plays, especially when I first saw her in Medea's Class Reunion, that was the first Tyler Perry play she did. I was just literally at the seat like, oh my God. And at the time when I first saw her in the play, I was like, I knew her from somewhere, but where do I remember her from? Because when Thanks for My Child came out, I was in kindergarten. But I remember the song, but it's been so long at that time because she really wasn't getting a lot of radio play, within the years. So when I saw her on that show, I knew her from somewhere, and it took me a while before I actually realized who she was. And I think what would end up happening was that I think it was a while after I saw Medea's Class Reunion, I picked up a Jet magazine, and I saw the magazine, and they did a segment on her, and I was like, oh shit, that's who she was. Oh my God. And I just kind of had a moment because I was like, oh my goodness, how could I forget that? But unfortunately I did. But but seeing her on Medea's Class Reunion, it brought me back to her, and she's definitely one of my favorite singers as well. I love her, and she's a phenomenal actress, and I definitely like her because she's such a multi-talented individual. She was born in 1961. She's from Brooklyn. Her parents had migrated from South Carolina. She was always surrounded by music. Her parents sung in gospel groups. Her mother definitely has that voice where she can hit them high notes, so that's where Cheryl gets it from. When she was 5 years old, her brother James was born. Her brother was very close, and sadly, her brother had died from bone cancer at the age of 20, and he left 4 kids. And, she actually helped raise his children. Her and her mother, they took on the responsibility of raising their children, but her and her brother were very close, so she took his death extremely hard. She also, oh yes, and she had went to Clara Barton High School, um, where she, because she wanted to go into a performance arts school, but her parents didn't want her to get into music. They wanted her to actually have a different career, so they got her to. So she ended up going to Clara Barton High School because she probably wanted to go to LaGuardia, and she ended up becoming a nurse, and she was a nurse for years. She was a pediatric nurse. So I thought that was great because being a nurse, she definitely, you definitely, deal with emotions, and you definitely deal with, patients, and due to the fact she was dealing with children, I think that's why she has such a motherly spirit, and why she's a great mother to her children, as well as to her nieces and nephews. In the 1980s, she ends up joining this group called Stargaze, and I remember Stargaze. They actually had some hits, and I definitely remember listening to some of their tracks and had no idea that it was Cheryl that was on, because they actually played one of the songs during the episode, and I was like, oh, I remember that track. Oh, damn, that was Cheryl? What? I was kind of like, I kind of had like an out of body experience a little bit. I was like, oh my god, that was her, and I didn't even know. But I used to like that song because I definitely have an old music ear, I definitely had great music influences from both of my uncles, my Uncle Keith and my Uncle Roy, who are now deceased, but they definitely had a very big impact on me as far as music, as well as my mother. So I was listening to music that was way before my time, while other kids would listen to the things, will listen to the music of the day. I was listening to the music of yesteryear, and I was learning some valuable lessons. So I thought that was interesting that, I remember Stargaze. That was pretty interesting that, she was actually a part of that group. Around in the early 80s, she had met David Jones, who was her first husband. They got married in 1985. She was still working as a nurse, but also she was still working on music. And the song that I was talking about from Stargaze, "You Can't Have It," I remember listening to that song and had no idea it was Cheryl Pepsii Riley that was singing lead. But now when I think back, I was like, damn. That voice is just unforgettable. It's just unforgettable. And then Bowleg Lou from Full Force, he talks about how he first met Cheryl. They were doing a play together, and that she was such a sweet person. She was beautiful, and then when she sang, he was like, oh my god. She blew him away. And the thing about it, they originally wanted her to do the track Take Me, I Wonder If I Take You Home. They wanted her to sing the lead, but at the time she was in the group Stargaze, and Stargaze had already, they had already was out before Full Force. So here it is, Full Force was they not only got a deal, but they also got a producing deal as well, because they produced for many other artists. And they wanted Cheryl Pepsii Riley to be on I Wonder If I Take You Home, but she was loyal to her group, so she didn't want to do it. But she regretted it because, they end up finding Lisa Lisa in Cold Jam, and the song went to #1. And she said for a minute, she kind of beat herself up about it, because she was like, man, I really messed up. Because it could have been Cheryl Pepsii Riley. It could have been Cheryl Riley in Cold Jam. Because at the time she was going by Cheryl Riley. And, after, Stargaze disbanded, she did go to work with Full Force. And they said that, for you to stand out, you definitely need a name. And while they were discussing this, there was a Pepsi on the table. And then they was thinking like, okay, just think about who you are. She's bubbly, she's positive, and she's sweet. Pepsi with 2 eyes. So that's when she became Cheryl Pepsii Riley. And they worked on her debut album, which had 9 songs. But the song that was the lead of the album was, Thanks for My Child. That was the first single. It went number one on the Billboard charts. Um, the next song she did was Me, Myself, and I, which talked about suicide and depression. Because she definitely was that type of singer that actually sung about, topics that were taboo. Like depression, anxiety, domestic violence, motherhood. She sung songs that were so relatable to so many people. And I think that's what makes Cheryl special. And let's see. Me, Myself, and I went to number 18 on the R&B charts. The album went to number 9. So here it is. She became a trailblazer. It was time for her to tour, and they pretty much told her that you got to quit your job, because at the time she was still working as a pediatric nurse, and she was like, and she's like, well, can I? It's like, no, boo boo. You're going to be on tour. You're going to be gone for a while. So you're going to have to quit your job, baby. So she ended up going on tour, and she was opening for Keith Sweat. And she was like living her dream. And that was around the time that her brother had passed away. But then following that, she had issues with her label, because when it came down to her sophomore album, they pretty much shelved it, because I think Columbia Records was trying to, pretty much they just signed Mariah Carey, and they were trying to put Mariah Carey stuff out there, and she just got pushed to the back, even though she was there before her. And that's another singer that could rival, that could really that could kind of rival Cheryl, because Cheryl had that phenomenal voice. Even though I love Mariah Carey, love her to bits to this day. I love me some Mariah, but definitely, here it is. You had two powerhouse singers on the label, but then Mariah had that machine behind her, so they pretty much went for Mariah, and they kind of shelved her. So she was kind of dealing with that. But instead of her just waiting on the label, she went into musical theater. And one of the first plays she did was Mama Don't, and she started to make a big impact in urban musical theater, and she's still renowned to this day. And then she ended up doing this this other song, this song from, I think it was on her sophomore album, How Can You Hurt the One You Love, which is about domestic violence. And they show her performing the song on the Apollo. She got on the floor and was singing the Apollo down. And I was just like, wow. Such a phenomenal talent. So, and I definitely seen her do that in Medea's Class Reunion. When she was singing, I literally was at the edge like, oh my God, this woman is phenomenal. She's amazing. And I was just drawn to her. So due to the fact that, they ended up releasing her album, years, I think like 2 years later, they finally released her sophomore album. It had some modest hits, but, but it got to the point that when it came towards the fact that it didn't have any big hits, she wanted to be released from her label, but they didn't want to release her. So what she did was that she started doing these songs that that they was coming up with, and she started to really she really started to really get on the label's nerves. But she did it intentionally because she wanted to leave, because she didn't feel that they were fully supporting her. They didn't actually push her the way that she should have been, and they didn't try. They really didn't. They really didn't foster her career the way that they should have. So she was pretty much doing songs like Bag Lady and No Means No and We All Bleed Red. And David Novak, who was the head of the label at the time, was like, you know what? We got to get her the hell out of here, because this woman's crazy. So they finally released her from her contract, and she ends up signing up with Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers was trying to put her in a box. They wanted to kind of give her a cookie cutter. They wanted her to be like Mary J. Blige. If anything, that was who they was comparing her to, because the label does that. They put you in a box and they want you to be like they try to create a formula with you, and they don't want you to stray away from that formula. But I remember that song "Gimme." I remember the video and all that. That was a dope song, and I would definitely remember that. And it was really about don't be talking about give me when you can't even if you're not gonna give in return. And it's talking about selfish MFs, the ones who always take more than they give. And it was a big hit, but they tried to put her into this box. And even Allison Williams, who definitely had the song, Just Call My Name, love that song. She was even talking about how it happened to her too, where they try to put you in this box and they try to package you like you're a product. And that was like her biggest gripe, because Cheryl Pepsii Riley was like, why can't I just be me? So eventually she parted ways with Warner Brothers as well. But then when she saw that the music industry wasn't working for her, she decided to become a background singer, and she did backup for Mary J. Blige, Missy Elliott, Jessica Simpson. And her niece has said that pretty much said that, look, success doesn't always mean being number one on the charts. Success means also being able to support your family. And being as a background singer, she was able to support her family, and was able to support the children that she was raising, which I thought was very remarkable. And they said in 2000 she had actually her and her first husband had divorced, and she went back into the realm of theater, working with David E. Talbert, and I think that's one of the plays she had did with Jamal Moore. And then and it was a new stage for her voice. And then magic happened, is when she met Tyler Perry. And Tyler Perry was talking about how he was working with some of these singers on the road who were batshit crazy. I think he was talking about Deidre Hicks, because she's right now on the reality series Your Husband Is Cheating on Us. And let's just say Deidre is a crazy motherfucker, but she's a phenomenal talent. So I think he was kind of shading her ass, because we know Deidre's a trip. Her ass is on divorce court, so we know Deidre's crazy as hell. So I think that was one person he was talking about when he said that he had to deal with all these batshit crazy artists. But with her, he had no issues with her. She was always on time. She was never late. She was always at rehearsal, and she always had a positive attitude. And the first play he put her into was Medea's Class Reunion, and I'm like, yeah, she sung her face off in that. Then she was in Medea Goes to Jail with Christian Keys. She was phenomenal in that, and she did about 9 Tyler Perry productions. And one of the plays that I definitely loved her in was Why Did I Get Married? She literally created the role that became like the blueprint for what Jill Scott did in the movie. Because her playing the role of Sheila, the woman who was battling obesity as well as being in a turbulent marriage, and how she was able to turn her life around when she learned to love herself and she learned to love again. Cheryl Pepsii Riley played that role so phenomenally, even to the point where she broke down when she finds out the truth that her husband was screwing her so-called best friend. And she broke down crying. I was crying with her, because I just so got drawn into that character. And she sung the house down in that one too. So definitely that was something that I definitely remember her from. And she led that cast, and she was amazing. And even and then also there was a talk about it, that why is it that Tyler Perry never put her in no movies? And what's his name? Bowleg Lou, from Full Force, was like, well, maybe he'll finally put her in a movie after this Unsung episode. But yeah, why you ain't never put her in no movies? And then Mark was even saying the same thing, like, yeah, man, why you ain't never do that? I'm like, cause he did have her on the soundtrack of Diary of a Mad Black Woman, and she also had a cameo in the movie where she was singing at this party at the law firm with Charles and with Charles and Helen. I'm sorry, I almost forgot her name. But yeah, like, yeah, she's a great actress. I was wondering the same thing too, Tyler. Because I definitely reviewed some of Tyler's shows on my channel, so I'm like, yeah, Tyler, why didn't you put her in a movie? She would have knocked it out the park, because she's a great talent. And also Chandra Corelli, who I think she was in Medea's Big Happy Family with her. Chandra Corelli's a great, phenomenal talent as well, and she even was one of the commentators on the episode too. But she also talked about how she ended up meeting this man, Mike Grace, who she was friends with for years, but then they got married, and he was because at the time she was divorced and he was divorced with 2 kids, so he was a single parent of 2 boys, and they actually got married, but and she definitely gravitated towards his son John, and she said that even though the marriage didn't last, she still was a mother to those 2 boys. But the thing about it, she's still performing. She does host this Black Velvet Mondays in New York, where it's like a platform where she tries to help showcase new talent, which I think is very phenomenal. She doesn't forget where she comes from, and the one thing that she stresses that don't sell your soul, be yourself. The glitz and the glam is just one side of it, but the other part is about you being about your family, about your community, about who you are as a person. So I thought that was very awesome, and I have to say this was a really good episode, and I'm glad they finally did an episode on her. But yeah, Tyler, put her in a movie. Yes, put her in a movie, or your next sitcom, make her the star of it. Do a sitcom with her, because you definitely are having success with the haves and the have-nots, and If Loving You Was Wrong. Do another sitcom and put Cheryl Pepsii Riley in it. Just saying, just an idea. But yeah, but if you end up doing that, don't forget about your boy. Don't forget about your boy Kenny. Just all I'm saying. But that's all I have, y'all, everybody. But if I missed anything, put it down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. But subscribe to my channel. Click that bell so you get notifications every time I drop a video. Also, follow me on all of my social platforms. I have them all listed in the description box. Also, like this video, comment on this video, and share this video. And I'll be back with the next episode of Unsung. So until next time, everybody, take care.